Blackhawks Insider is back. Welcome aboard. It's the official podcast of the Chicago Blackhawks, presented by ChevyDrivesChicago.com. Drive what Captain Jonathan Taves drives. Remember, make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever podcast platform you use, like our YouTube page as well. We've got a ton of content posted on the Blackhawks YouTube page. Welcome into the show. I'm Chris Fosters, joined by my co-host, Colby Cohen, who doesn't look as sunburned as I expected coming back from a long weekend in Tampa covering the Frozen Four. Did you get any time outside on the Riverwalk, bud, or what's up?
Yeah, I did. My legs got roasted one day because we must have been sitting outside having lunch, and I didn't put any sunblock on, and I didn't think a little bit about it. And then I got back to my room a little bit later, and I took a really funny photo. I sent it to my wife just of like my knees down or something, and like the contrast between, the short, where the short ends and it was really bad. Luckily it was early in the week, and I got the hydration going, and I kind of was able to dull it back a little bit. But, it's a work trip, man. Most of the time during the days we're kind of busy at the Frozen Four. I sat out at the pool with Cappy one day for like an hour, actually. Cappy was down there, Paul Caponigri, covering the Big Ten. You all probably remember him last year doing some Hawks games. But, yeah, I mean, the weather was beautiful, though, man. It was like 85 degrees. There was not a lot of humidity. We tried to eat all of our meals outdoors as best as we could. Try to have lunch outdoors, covered, but outdoors. So, I think the NCAA should have the Frozen Four in Tampa every single year. I've done 5 of them now, and that was hands down the best one.
Well, Colby, I'm glad you had some time with our mutual friend, Paul Caponigri, down in Tampa. Listen, that guy couldn't get a sunburn if he wanted to. I don't have that problem. In fact, as someone who's also had plenty of leg sunburns in his day, dude, it's a tricky situation because, the legs are a lot of real estate. It takes a lot of sunscreen to cover those bad boys up. And, sometimes you're thinking, the sun's not going to hit my legs. I don't really need to apply to the lower extremities. And then, of course, the sun in Florida burns a little bit hotter than it does up in the Midwest. So I feel for you on that. I really do. But I'm glad you're all in good shape with your upper half. It's the most important part.
SPF 30. It's a bit. I could not risk going on national TV looking like a lobster or looking like a tomato. So I was pretty responsible about it. And now that the season's wrapping up, that's when tan in the skin becomes a very important battle in my household, because my wife will look like a coffee bean the entire summer with not needing any sunblock or anything. She's just, got that perfect skin gene, and I'll be doing everything I can to keep up with her so she can't come up to me too often and do the forearm check against me and then make fun of me. So,
well, shout out to Alex. Blackhawks prospects, there were a lot of them in the NCAA tournament and even the Frozen Four. Of course, Quinnipiac wins the NCAA tournament. No Blackhawks prospects on the Quinnipiac roster, but were there any noteworthy performances from Blackhawks prospects that you saw?
Definitely, and I think that I thought Drew Comesso was awesome.
I think Rocket agrees with that for sure.
Yeah, the Dogs. We made it almost an entire season without having the Dogs getting involved in a podcast, so only fitting they waited till the end of the season to get involved. But in the national semifinal game, Drew Comesso stood on his head for BU, and I think he showed why he's ready for the next level of hockey. I totally expect him to sign an entry-level contract with the Blackhawks. We're filming this on the 10th, so whether it happens today, tomorrow, I'm not really sure, but I'm expecting it. But, BU could have been down 7-0 in the first period. I mean, that's just how well Drew Comesso played. He kept the team on his back through that game. He really did. He stood up. He was their best player the last probably 8 to 12 weeks of the season, was phenomenal in the playoffs. Really encouraging, too, because that's when the games get low scoring, and that's when it gets more important. So I was really happy to see how Drew played. And then after the game, I went back near the locker room, and I mean, seeing how upset he was, it actually speaks a lot to his character and how much he lived in the moment of being at BU. I see a lot of prospects and draft picks, especially the high draft picks, they've got 1 foot in and 1 foot out the door when they're playing their last college games, and that just wasn't the case for Comesso because he was so committed to trying to win. And I think that's a big carrot for a player at that age right now, because you just don't see it. I thought Ryan Green was okay. I thought that I think what I liked about Ryan Green's game is that when the offense wasn't there for him, which it wasn't the last couple of weeks, he found a way to still make an impact on the game. He was good defensively. He's covering up for the D when they're being offensively aggressive. He's just a very smart hockey player. And, he had 31 or 32 points in his first year in college hockey, which, I mean, those are really high-end numbers. I bet you next year he gets 45 to 50 points and he's a leader in the entire conference type of player. Like, that's how highly I think of Ryan Green's game. And I think, the Blackhawks finding guys like that in the second round, especially when we're loaded up with second-round picks, is really important. So, great event. I love doing the Frozen Four. Those games are so meaningful. I have so much fun with Butchie and Barry on the air. We really just laugh a lot at each other, and we try to bring that on the air. College is a little different than NHL. I think, the fan bases are a little different. I think the expectations are always a little bit different. But it was a really fun weekend. I know you're dying and you're chomping at the bit to talk about some viral moments. So I will cede the floor to you so you can, gas me up a little bit.
I was going to say, you became a viral sensation, not once, but twice over the course of the Frozen Four in Tampa. I mean, I was really proud of you. I think the proudest I've ever been of you was when I saw you come up in a Spittin' Chicklets post on Instagram. I mean, that's when you made it, bro. So congratulations. I want to get into that a little bit later in the show, specifically when we get to our Sellies and Chirps. And then I tell you what, our guest that we have coming up on the show, Derek King, you got into it a little bit with your second viral moment with him when you ended up, just letting your feelings do the talking, and you gave Quinnipiac's head coach a hug on
He asked me for a hug, okay? He asked me for a hug.
That's good to know. Now I know that I can ask you for a hug next time I see you, and I know you'll reciprocate.
Well, it's look, I think the first Spittin' Chicklets moment was obviously, funny for everyone involved, the guy behind me, and I'll hold off on it because I know you want to talk about it, but the second moment was a really cool moment. And just to give people context who weren't watching, the game ends in overtime. They score 10 seconds in, and at that point, my job is to jump off the bench and interview the coach before he goes to the handshake, before he goes to the trophy, anything. So it is raw and real emotion. And Rand Pecknold, the head coach, he was the head coach of the U.S. junior team. I've known him for a while. We're not so close that would have been something I would have expected. There are some coaches that I'm really close with that would have made a little bit more sense. But I asked him his first question, and I sort of build the question up a little bit, and because they've come a long way. I mean, it's an awesome story, them winning a national championship. And he looks at me. He had nothing to say, and he just couldn't find the words. The tears were coming out of his eyes. So he gave me a couple-word answer. He looked at me and said, sorry, I can't. I don't know what else to say. And then he looks at me and says, can I have a hug? It was such a great moment emotionally, and a moment that it actually took me back to when our team at BU won, and the feeling of scoring an overtime winning goal, and it brought me back to that moment. I mean, I haven't felt that '09 moment in such a real, true fashion since I'm interviewing Rand Pecknold and he asks me for a hug because he's so overcome with emotion. So I gave him a hug, like a real hug. I didn't bro hug him. I gave him the full hug. I gave him a tight squeeze. He gave me a tight squeeze. And my producer in my ear is like, okay, well, now you still got to ask him 2 more questions. So, look, it was an awesome moment. Honestly, I feel really grateful that happened because it really, it found sort of an emotional side of sports that I just don't get to feel anymore that often. And so it was really cool. It really was. And I made awful announcing, and I wasn't even getting ripped. So that's such a win. When do you ever make an article on awful announcing and not get ripped for it? So it's a win, a lot of wins in that moment all around, but an awesome way to end the Frozen Four. One of my second thoughts was literally I hope Chris doesn't see this because I just feel like he's going to use this against me till the end of time.
Yeah. I mean, I never knew you were such a good hugger. That's all. And now I know that you give them out for free. That's good to know. I'll be asking for hugs all the time. And I would encourage, our Blackhawks Insider Podcast audience to do the same. Free hugs, Colby Cohen. He's got them stocked up. I bet you give Derek King a hug if he asked for one.
Definitely.
I would. He's our featured guest on this episode of Blackhawks Insider. And to just catch you up, Derek King has been in the Blackhawks organization since 2016. He was originally a coach and a head coach for the Rockford Ice Hogs and then became the interim head coach with the Blackhawks last season and stayed with the Blackhawks this year as one of the lead assistants on Luke Richardson's staff, focusing on the offense in particular. Just buckle up, right? I mean, we just throw King, like a sauce pass and see where he takes it. It's a lot of fun talking to him, and it's been really fun building on the relationship that we started with him, Colby, don't you think, from last season?
Yeah, he was one of my favorite interviews that we got to do because he's so genuine. There's no guard. There's no filter. There's no what's the right or wrong thing to say. You just get this genuine guy who loves hockey, loves what he does, and just loves to shoot the breeze. I mean, that's the reality, and that's really how this interview felt. We have to get him back, next season. And, what a gem of a human that he is. We're very lucky to have a guy like him in our organization.
He's got a great sense of humor, too. So without further ado, here is our conversation with Blackhawks assistant coach Derek King. Kinger, welcome to the Blackhawks Insider Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. On a game day, no less, the team just wrapped up morning skate. But hey, look, we're 80 games into the season right now, and the daily routine's pretty much set in stone. I mean, you can handle these extra commitments like coming on a podcast every
exactly.
now and then, right?
We don't even have to go on the ice. They know every drill for the morning skates. We could probably just sit up in the stands and watch it. Whether they're gonna screw it up when we're on the ice or we're not on the ice. So, but I'm glad to be on it. Thanks for thinking about me, and this is great.
Well, Kinger, we've been trying to get you on this for 2 years, so this is you were an A-rated guest for us that we just kept hearing you were too busy, too much going on.
Yeah, I'm in the limelight here. I got a lot going on my plate. Real busy, so I'm knocking everything over, and I'm in Jimmy Waite's office, so it's a little quiet. I'm knocking everything over at his desk here. He's going to be sour at me. But
it's probably super disorganized there, right, on Jimmy Waite's desk, like all kinds of clutter and things.
Yeah, it's a mess. He doesn't know all his goalie drills. He's got one goalie drill. That's all he has. So,
well, Coach, to the point of practice and morning skates, I don't want to speak for Colby, but I know you're sometimes pretty distracting on the ice at morning skate. I mean, you scored over 260 goals in your career, and I see you pull the trigger from time to time on the open net there. Looks like your shot's still in pretty good shape. I mean, it's got to be one of the benefits of being a coach, right?
The key words there were open net. I'm good at open net goals. It's these sticks, I'm telling you. These things are so, I'm like in a 75 flex. They just zip off the stick. So it's probably a little, it's not quite. If I pulled out my old wood one, it wouldn't be going that quick. It'd be slow.
What did you? Well, now that you bring that up, when you were playing, Kinger, what was your stick for most of your NHL career? Was there one, or were you constantly changing it up?
No, I used. I started with Titan because I was waiting for my Victoriavilles to come in, and then I used Victoriaville the whole time. I just pulled one out. I had one in my place in Rockford, which we just sold. So I was cleaning it out yesterday, and I pulled out a old, brand new wooden Victoriaville. I'm gonna have to bring it in. I grabbed this stick.
See it.
I grabbed it, and I'm like, I cannot believe I played with this stick. There's no. It's like, it's
5 pounds.
It weighed a ton. I couldn't tell you my lie. I couldn't tell you. The curves were whatever we wanted it because we could heat them up with the blowtorch and bend them with our foot or in the door jamb or what have you. So we always tweaked it a bit. But oh my God, it was such an ugly. I'm gonna have to bring it in, let you guys take a look at it. I feel like one of these like back in the 20s when somebody pulled an old stick out of their garage. That's what I feel like now when I pull mine out. It's so bad.
Did you ever go to the 2-piece, or did you stay full
No,
1-piece the entire career?
I tried a 2-piece when Easton came out with the shafts, and then you could get blades and that, but I couldn't do it. So I went over to Europe, and that's where I played with Planner in Germany. And I was still using, that was in 9/11, so that was 01, right? That's when I went over, and I went over for a year, and I came back. I signed with Detroit for Grand Rapids. That was the Reggie Dunlop job, player coach. And when I went to camp, and it was, I mean, they had all Hall of Famers, like it was crazy how many good players they had. And they laughed. Brett Hull was laughing at me. He goes, Kinger, you got to switch to these synergies. And I'm like, why? This is what everybody's using. So I tried them, and then I finished with Synergy. And then I was retired, and then all of a sudden, the years and years later, they start coming out with all these different graphites and what have you. But yeah, I didn't start, probably my last 2 years playing in the minors was using those Synergies. And how advanced they are now compared to back then. I mean, I don't know when you came in the league, I don't know what they were.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I can tell you what I remember most vividly about the old original Synergy stick, because I recently acquired the first generation silver Easton stick, like the one that was the first one. 425 grams is how much that stick weighed. And now the sticks are
they're nothing.
A third of that.
Yeah, and they were square.
Oh yeah, this is
shaft.
This is a square shaft, and I mean, I used it when we filmed the on ice stuff with Jack Johnson and Peter Mrazek, and the minute I got on the ice, the first thing Jack Johnson noticed was the old school Synergy stick, and people reached out to me on Twitter that saw the feature running on the pregame show, asking where I got that, because even that is like, I mean, I was probably 13 or 14 when those things came out, and that was a big deal. But you must have to purchase some sticks now, Kinger. You got a couple of boys who are playing hockey, so I assume you guys are cutting checks to the pro shops left and right.
And it's a good thing we get deals through, CCM or Bauer and that, so we get a little bit of a discount. And it's got to be, I keep telling them, listen, it's the same stick that you used last year. They just changed the colors on it, and they put a different maybe name on it or something. The Synergy 3000, right? And they argue with me. No, I've got to have that. I'm like, all right. It's the exact same stick. So my garage is filled with, I probably got about 20 grand worth of hockey sticks in my garage. It's crazy. But it's a good thing we get a little perks from playing or coaching. So it helps a little bit. I can't imagine a normal parent that's, doesn't get the perks I get, has to pay full price for everything, because it can be expensive.
Well, do you have a blowtorch on hand just in case?
No, I might have. they're lefties, so they might have to use that old Vic one day.
So you were basically putting your own flex in your stick then, right? With using the blowtorch to kind of mold it. Is that?
Well, I just mold the curve, but the flex was, I don't even know what it was. I don't even think we had a flex.
Senior. No, it would
Yeah,
just be senior, intermediate, or junior.
Yeah, it would be like I'll bring it in one day next year. I'll bring it in and we'll try to figure out what do we think the flex is. Even we might not be able to bend the shaft. Could be like 100 and something, right?
Well, so with the curve of the blade, I mean, guys would get, you couldn't have too much of a curve in the blade, but it only in like the final 5 minutes of a game when the officials would really call it.
Yeah, if somebody wanted to call you, so your trainer would add these. It's like a measurement thing, and they'd put it up, and they would measure your curve to make sure. And you'd always have one on the bench. You'd have, say, 3 sticks on the bench, and one of them was like you said, like for the last 5 minutes of the game, so just in case you're going to get called on your curve. But I never used a big toe curve. I used like an upshoot, a little heel curve. So, but you could really bend it. It was kind of the lazy man's curve. You could just shoot pucks and just come off it. But
you did that pretty well. So there must be some method to your madness.
Yeah,
40-goal season in the NHL. I mean, that's not a mistake.
Yeah, sometimes you get lucky. That's all.
So where was your spot on the net when you were coming down in a breakaway? I mean, were you shooting for the corners? Were you going 5-hole? And I mean, would you see the goalie or would you see the back of the net? Kind of visually, what was your approach?
I never really thought about it. Just when you kind of picked what you had, but I was a big 5-hole shooter. I used to always like drop the shoulder, a little fake, get them moving, and I would throw it 5-hole. A little different now with goalies. They're so technically sound. Back then it was guys they weren't butterflying as much when I first started. Near the end they were all Patrick Roys and Brodeurs were starting to butterfly and flop and whatever. These guys were they'd hold their ground, so you could actually get away with some shots on the ice and far side and on the ice and score a goal. So, I would probably say mostly like a 5-hole shooter. I was, but a lot of my goals too was hanging around the net and tapping them in. I had great players to play with and picking up rebounds and stuffing them in and what have you. But coach always told me the puck's got to get to the front of the net somehow. So why not stand there? So that's what I did.
Well, and I think that sort of gives you a lot of credibility with the players. I think last year when you became the interim head coach of the team, one of the first things Patrick Kane talked about was your numbers and your success as an NHLer. I mean, that's what guys do now. They go right to Hockey DB. Yeah. They want to see what a guy
exactly.
did. So you've got the Hall of Famer, the first ballot Hall of Famer, Patrick Kane's respect, and this guy could play. But I'm not really concerned with that. I want to know at home. You've got your boys, you got the twins, you got your older son. They all play hockey. One's a pro in the East Coast League. I know he's had some minor league success. What about the twins? Like, do they realize that you were this, high-end NHL player who scored 40 goals and who put up a lot of points over a really long career? And I know you're humble, and I know you're not ever gonna toot your own horn, so we'll do it for you. But do they ever look or you couldn't be less cool to them? They couldn't care less.
Yeah, they couldn't care less. The twins for sure. They're just. Dad, I would come home and they'd be, hey, Dad, how you doing? Boom, and they go do their thing off with their buddies. Or I'm the one that drives them to the rink and sits up in the stand and watches. That's how they see it. They are the older one. He gets it. Obviously, he'd be like, oh my God, Dad, you're the head coach of the Chicago Blackhawks. What's going on? I'm just like, for me, I'm just like, yeah, well, we'll see what happens. And he's excited. The other two are just like, when are you coming home? Or are you going to bring, I need some white tape or I need laces or what have you. They got a big, what they did? They got a big kick because all their friends would send them stuff on Instagram when it was the Ted Lasso pictures or
the Walter White.
The Walter White. They thought that was funny. I think it was Barstool had a T-shirt made, so they wanted one. They purchased it. with my
king
face with
shirt.
the crown,
Yeah.
and I'm like, where do you find this stuff? But that stuff was to them was
Yeah.
it wasn't the fact that I was behind the bench or I was the coach for a while there.
Of an original six
Yeah,
NHL team.
it was the T-shirt with the crown
Yeah.
and my mug on it.
Well-
They thought that was
well,
funny.
Chris, I know that you did a number of games last year and you were kind of in and out, but I do remember I'm doing a game between the benches last year and they are doing the look-alike thing on the Jumbotron, which like I've gotten thrown on before. I think you've probably gotten thrown on before, Chris. But like this is early in Kinger's tenure coaching, maybe 3 weeks in or so, 4 weeks in. They've got Walter White and then they show Kinger while he's coaching.
So that's the stuff they got a big kick out of. All that stuff. It had nothing to do with the game or anything, or win column or loss columns. It was crazy. But yeah.
Colby got comped to Vince Vaughn, Kinger,
Yeah.
which I think that's
see that.
a pretty good.
I was happy with it. I was happy with it.
Take it and run.
That's
Take it
right.
and run with it.
That's right.
But no, it was good. It was exciting time. It was all new to me. It was, obviously an honor to do it, and I think we enjoyed it as a family. I don't think we got to enjoy the full scope of it, just them having to stay in Rockford and me in the city kind of thing. But yeah, it was cool. I was cool there for a while. Now I'm back to my own, just a dad.
Well, how about this season on the ice? Look, I mean, everyone knew that it was not going to be a playoff season for the Hawks going in. But, from my perspective, I just think you and Luke and the entire coaching staff have done such a great job fostering a community feel in the locker room. It seems like the guys enjoy being with each other, even though there haven't been as many wins as anyone would like. But what has this season been like for you, and especially in terms of the offense? You work with the forwards first and foremost. Who have you been pleased to work with this year, and who do you think has kind of made a jump in his game?
Well, you know what? I think if we go back from last year, the one thing I missed out on or missed doing was working with players individually, and maybe that was my mistake. But coming into this year, I just was looking forward to working with all the forwards and trying to help them become better players and what have you on the ice. So I've really enjoyed that. Guys that have made some strides, like I thought, from the days in Rockford when we had Hagel, I thought he made some big strides, and obviously he's turned himself into a pretty full-time NHLer. Reese Johnson too last year made some big strides. Another player I had. I think Ed Whistle's starting to make some strides a little bit, but you know what? I really enjoyed seeing Reichel come up and be so much better than he was the year before. Just the way he approached the game, the battle level, going to the gray areas a lot more. He's still got some stuff to learn. As players, you always try to learn something. But it was just a joy. Lafferty too. I enjoyed having Lafferty. I thought he made some huge strides too from the 1 year to the next year. And obviously, it's all the guys I'm talking about. They're all gone. Like most of them are all gone, right? So it's getting to know. And this year's being injuries, and then we had Phillips up, Gust up, Cini up, and then Reichel, and then I don't work with the D so much, but it's good to see some of those Rockford guys come up, and you get a chance to work with them. And some of them I haven't worked with, and just how good they approach the game, and what a good job Anders and his staff have done down there. Because when they stepped in, as you know, when you watch the games, these guys contributed, and they fit in right away. So
there was no drop off.
Yeah.
I literally was just gonna say, I think a lot of that has to do with your relationship with Anders, Luke's collaborative coaching style.
Yep.
Because I will say, every guy who came up, players that were career American League players that got opportunity this year, they came up to the NHL and they did not look out of place. They understood the system. They understood positionally where to be. Mm-hmm. And obviously, Anders, that he gets a lot of credit, him and his staff. But I think I've been in situations before, Kinger, where the AHL and the NHL, they were all shaking their heads at each other, the coaching staffs. They weren't
they don't know what they're talking
simpatico.
about. Yeah.
Exactly. One thought the other was an idiot, right?
Yeah.
But here, you guys have this relationship, even going back to last year. I mean, you and I are on the golf course together in the preseason. Before, you're still the head coach in the American League at the time, but that cohesiveness between you and management and the staff at the time, then that continued when you took over. Then you're now, the assistant coach. And I see you working with guys on the bench, and I see you pulling the iPad out and talking to guys. But, that's not always the case. And I want our fans to kind of understand that you sometimes get into situations. I mean, look at the Chicago Wolves. They just announced that they're independent next year. They're not even going to have an NHL team that they're partnered with because they don't want to deal with that type of development path. So what you guys have done here has been enjoyable to see and really important, because we've got all these young players coming over the next number of years, and they're all going to probably go through Rockford, and the cohesiveness there, it just is so important.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that especially with our type of team where we do have, we got some guys that have been in the league, but they 2 or 3 years, but they haven't really established themselves as, that next level of player. So it's good to see those guys come in, even some of the trades, like, even Double A there, Thanasio and then Dickinson. These guys coming in here, they've had years where they've did well, but now, they've had opportunity, and it's nice to see those guys take advantage of that opportunity. Some guys, they get traded and they go to a weaker team and they don't take advantage of that. So these guys have, and it's, not to toot our horn, but I think our staff has done a pretty good job. And Luke, obviously, making sure that we're all positive and we're all on the same page, and there's no point of freaking out or losing it. And hey, do you get angry at some of the plays they make? Sure they did. But you got to remember, as player, you did the same thing. So how would you like to, the response you would give them is how did you want to hear it? Did you want to hear Al Arbor screaming in your ear and telling you to go undo your skates and go sit at the corner of the bench? Or did you want to be, obviously the technology here with the iPads and the whiteboards, you wait for them to get their heart rate down, and then you talk to them like, hey, seriously, if they're going to make it 4 or 5 times in a row after you talk to them, you might have to sit them down for a little bit. But for the most part, our guys, I will say, maybe on one hand, I could count the times where we're not very good competing and just nothing working right. For the most part this year, I think we've competed every night. We're in every game for their, it's that 2 periods of we're in it, and then there's that little drop off in one of the periods where that just kills us, especially against teams that, there's no sugarcoating it. There's a lot of teams out there with some really good high-end players. We don't have that right now. So, but I will say we are competing, and we do try.
Well, Kinger, you mentioned Brandon Hagel, a guy that you saw turn into an established NHLer from your time with him in Rockford and then to the Blackhawks. He, of course, gets traded to the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the 2 players in return, Taylor Radish and Boris Kachuk, I think have both taken big steps this season on NHL ice, and in particular for Taylor Radish, getting to that 20-goal marker this season. Is that an important plateau to hit for a goal scorer? Getting a 20-goal season under your belt, and do you think he can really? Is that going to boost his confidence a lot going into the offseason?
I hope it does. It's a huge accomplishment for him, and not that I wasn't thinking of those guys earlier, but with guys like that, I will say those 2 took advantage of the situation they're in right now. You put those 2 players on a high-end team, contending team, they might not see the ice as much as they do with the situation we're in here. So hats off to those guys for seeing that and taking advantage of it, because they could easily just be like, get through the season and what have you, but they didn't. They've worked hard for what they've gotten. They get an opportunity to play, especially with Rads playing with some good hockey players, line mates. And then even, I think Boris too this year, establishing himself with that line with JJ and then Joey Anderson. That's been a solid line for us, and they've embraced it. They get their ice time. They're getting a little bit of power play time, and it's fun to watch the have success.
Yeah. Well, look, Kinger, I this is really going to be the last one for me, and it's more, I hear you talk about, well, how would I wanted to hear that as a former player, and I think our whole staff has that filter, and I think that's cool because I've played for a lot of former players that really forget what it's like to turn a puck over, what it's like to miss a defensive coverage, and I think especially with the modern day human being, I think it's so important to have that lens when you're kind of dealing with things, and I think that's only going to help us as we continue to grow through this rebuild, and then we start to look towards contending in the future. But I think one of the most enjoyable things has been, the way you've always dealt with the media. When you were the head coach, obviously now you're not doing as much media stuff, but you come on here with us. You're so relaxed. I mean, it's like we're drinking a beer and we're just kind of shooting the breeze about hockey, talking about your old sticks and whatnot. So, I mean, that's been, look, you were the same guy on the golf course last year when we golfed together before the season started that you are as the head coach of the Blackhawks. And I just, I want to, like, you'll never talk about it and you'll never take credit for it, but I'm going to do it for you since I just, it's been awesome and I've appreciated it so much.
No, it's been great, especially when we first met golf course until even all last year. All the media, all he is, were great to me. I never had a problem. It wasn't like, I got to go talk to these guys. What are they going to say next? It was, you
bad
guys,
shrimp.
bad shrimp. That's all. But no, you guys were great. You never hit me with anything I didn't, wasn't prepared for or anything like that. So hats off to you guys also.
Well, Kinger, I can't let you go without asking you just one quick follow-up on your Reggie Dunlop experience as player coach with the Grand Rapids Griffins. I did not know that, and time, really, really big in my development. So
I can't believe you never watched that show.
Man, welcome to the universe, Chris.
That's another chat.
That's definitely another chat. But hey, be happy that I got the reference now. So I mean, you were really a player. You were really a player coach.
Player coach. If I wasn't playing or in and out, or I actually got hurt that year, so I was out a little bit. So I was behind the bench, coaching and kind of learning the trade, and so it was different. Guys used to call me Reggie. They used to call me Reggie once in a while, but no, it was a good experience.
It was a little, Chris, just to give you a little context. Like I turned pro after my junior year, so that was like 2010. There were still some East Coast League teams at the time that had some player coaches.
Yeah.
It was kind of the end of that, though. I think probably from like 95 to like 2008, it started to trickle from the American League to the East Coast League. But it did happen. And it happens in Europe, I think, still with guys who are sort of these legendary long-term players in these leagues. So it does happen, Chris. But the American League has become a very professionally run business that it necessarily it wasn't back in the early 00s, right, Kinger?
No,
I mean,
exactly.
If I remember it right.
Yeah, it was. You only had a few prospects on your team. The rest were just all vets. That's how it was. So there was there, and because what you said about the Wolves, that's how they always operated when it was the IHL and the American League. They only had a few guys from a franchise prospect players, but they would play there and they would pay their veteran guys good, and they always had good teams that competed, and if not, they won it a lot. So I think that's what he's getting to. I think he's tired of babysitting. He wants to get those cups back in the Chicago area.
So did you have a Hansen line or anything like that?
No, I stayed away from that stuff. But it's such a great
Kinger
movie.
was a goal scorer.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But it was a lot of fun. It was a good way to, I still felt like I could play at that level, and then I got to learn a little bit about the coaching side of it. So that's why when I got into the job wasn't there for me after I retired. A management change and everything, so they went a different direction. So then I finally got the chance with the Marlies in '09. With a good friend of mine asked me to come along and help him out. But when I got that job, after I started, I was just like, and I've probably said it to Cole, but probably said it to you before. I was going to call every coach I had and apologize to them because I must have drove those guys crazy.
I'm still working on my apology tour right now.
I mean, some of them have passed on since, so I can't do it now. But yeah, I must have drove them nuts. But this is the kind of way I approach it. I know I made mistakes. I know I did a lot of stupid things when I was playing. So trying to help these guys not make the same mistakes I did.
Well, to echo what Colby said, it's been great getting to know you, and thank you for imparting the pearls and pieces of wisdom that you do in the hallway after morning skate or anything like that. So, and thanks a lot for coming on our podcast today. We appreciate it, and we'll eagerly look forward your return and get into some more discussions on Slapshot and other things.
For sure. Well, I appreciate you guys having me, and let's do it again. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I definitely look forward to having Derek King back for future conversations, and we could have it sounds like we could have a Slapshot special episode with just Kinger, and I think that would be gold as well.
I think Kinger needs to become a host of the podcast. Maybe we got to have him special guest host an episode next year. I know like our schedules are always, I missed a couple episodes and missed you guys. I know, Kaylee had something going on today. So maybe Kinger's our guest host option next season because he's awesome, right? He's so great.
The plug and play co-host when we need a pinch hitter. Yeah, I think you're onto something there for sure. Let's get into Sellies and Chirps now. And I think Derek King would be great on Sellies and Chirps in the future as well. But
Chirps probably.
Chirps for sure. I want to Selly or Chirp Hot Pockets. And the context behind that, we can obviously chirp the food. Selly or I don't mean to, Selly or chirp.
Should I pull it up while you're talking? Should I try to pull up the post and show it on the screen while you're talking?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll look for it.
Let's do that because first of all, so the Blackhawks are playing a game. I'm on the air while Colby is doing the Michigan Frozen Four game. The Michigan Quinnipiac game in the Frozen Four. And I get a text from a buddy of mine who's a Michigan alum, and it just said, like, the caption of it's a picture, and the caption is just LOL Colby. And it's that picture right there of a fan with his face on the glass right behind Colby when he's doing his one of his on-air hits. And what was crazy about it is that it was just the picture, and then after the game, I see it on Instagram, and it's been turned into a meme by Spittin' Chicklets, with the caption being, me with the Hot Pockets in the microwave at like 3 a.m. So, gotta say, it was a pretty great meme. Colby had a priceless look on his face. And then, I wasn't sure at first, like, was the fan actually putting his face up against the glass like that? Or was it edited? So
no.
He was actually doing that.
He was doing it. The producer let me know because he wanted me to shift over a little bit. But I shifted. He said shift left, but I didn't realize like my left or his left. So I shifted the wrong way. And if anything, I gave him even more room over my shoulder to. So for the championship game, though, I made friends with the people sitting behind me. I got them an official game puck. And I said, anytime I put my thumb up behind my back, I'm on camera. Please do not do anything to make me look stupid. So I got in front of it.
Well, it definitely didn't make you look stupid. I mean, it was just a hilarious TV moment that fortunately carried over to the interweb world. But Sellies or Chirps for Hot Pockets. I mean, I'm going to just in light of the meme involving my guy Colby, I'm going to celebrate Hot Pockets. I think they're great. It can be a high risk, high reward proposition. I mean, I think the problem with Hot Pockets is that you either cook them to the point where they are so incredibly hot that you scald the inside of your mouth, or you don't cook it enough and you get like a frozen pocket in the middle instead. So it's kind of hard to snipe Hot Pockets in terms of cooking them the right way, but I'm down for a good pepperoni Hot Pocket. I mean, especially at 3 a.m. And I mean, who's to say? I've probably been the guy in the microwave, especially once upon a time, like just waiting on that timer to go off in the middle of the night. So what about you? Are you a Hot Pockets guy? You've been thinking about Hot Pockets in a new way since you went viral?
So I'll celebrate with you on this one because I got a number of messages from my former teammates and classmates in college. Like, this was literally our life in college, in our dorm rooms or our apartments. And so I'll celebrate it. On top of it, I don't know if it was after the Thursday night doubleheader. One of the nights in Tampa, we came back to our hotel. It was myself, my Barry, Butchie, our producer, like the whole group. We had all gone out, had a couple of beers. I think it might have been after the doubleheader. And sure enough, we're all looking for hot food. And it's like, 2 o'clock in the morning, and in the lobby, Hot Pockets.
Unbelievable.
So we actually all were grabbing the Hot Pockets, took them all up to our room. And then the next morning, everyone was like, oh, shouldn't have had that Hot Pocket. You called it high risk, high reward. The high risk of it is how you feel the next day after eating a Hot Pocket at 2 o'clock in the morning. that to me is the risk. But we've all been there. I'd be lying if I said I didn't. It's all fun and games. I mean, the people that do that are creative. I ended up doing Spit and Chicklets podcast a couple days later. So with Colby
Nice.
Armstrong and Matt Murley. So we got to kind of shoot the breeze and build off that a little bit. So funny moments, no doubt, between the hug and between the Hot Pocket meme. I mean, there's really nowhere to go. No, can't go any higher up, Chris. So I can only imagine what's the fall going to be.
Yeah, well, it sounds like maybe the fall for you was your return from
The next
from
morning.
Tampa. Yeah, your airport experience.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Oh well, that teased me up. And it was actually so. I've lived in Chicago now for 2 years. A lot of my travel has been with the team. So I haven't spent a ton of time at any of the airports. Done a lot of airport pickups. But I mean, O'Hare versus Midway. I gotta say, I really struggle with O'Hare Airport right now. I got delayed for about 6 hours on my way to Tampa in O'Hare Airport. I was at a terminal where the ceiling was so low, I honestly basically had to crouch to walk through this terminal. I mean, it was way out there. Some of the vendors I feel like were from 1971. There was like a restaurant that had a bunch of Blackhawks like jerseys and things in it, and literally the jerseys that they had, like I saw like Victor Stahlberg's jersey, and like I'm like, this is as out of date as the terminal. And I'm sitting there wondering myself, as I land in Tampa, which has this beautiful, nice airport, I'm like, this is Chicago. This is literally one of the biggest metropolitan cities in the world. I'm like, how is O'Hare not refurbished or polished or, and now I'm starting to think I might have to start becoming a Midway person and getting those flights out of Midway. I saw Cappy. He told me I flew out of Midway and didn't have any problems. So I guess my cellular chirp is like, what is up with O'Hare? I mean, like that needs to be addressed. This city is too great to have O'Hare being such a stain.
Yeah, look, I mean,
So I'm chirping it. If there's any question, I'm chirping it.
I will look, like O'Hare definitely has got issues, and I agree with you that it's very dated. even the bathrooms, like, and maybe in particular, the bathrooms are really lacking, I think. And it's again, as you said, the contrast is most stark when you see a modern airport like Tampa, like Dallas, even some other Midwest airports like Detroit or Minneapolis are just light years ahead of O'Hare in terms of recent renovations. Not to mention the fact that it's really, really expensive to park there. It's expensive to take an Uber out there. I just want to caution you before you run like to Midway. Midway is fine. It is harder for pickups than O'Hare. Like
it is hard for pickups. I've done it. It's a pain.
I have picked up plenty of people from Midway, and I'm not kidding. Like every time I make a wrong turn somewhere or like go off on a wrong ramp and end up with departures when I'm supposed to be at arrivals or
I've been there too. Totally
so
get it.
Midway is tough, man.
So we're 0 for 2.
More expensive too.
We're 0 for 2, and Midway is pretty heavy on Southwest. I think like that's kind of their thing. So
if you're a Southwest guy, then Midway for sure. Although Midway does have flights out of O'Hare now, but
you mean Southwest, yeah?
Thank you. Yes. Southwest has flights out of typically Midway, but now O'Hare at Terminal 5. However, I did just want to say, Colby, that there is a big construction plan that is in the works for O'Hare. So things
now, are they going to do that before or after they give us the 4 hours of traffic we now have to sit on to get to O'Hare or to get home from O'Hare because they've narrowed the highway down to 2 lanes?
Yeah, I think there will probably be some overlap there, but I mean, this is like, I think this O'Hare thing, this is still a little bit of a ways out. Like they're saying that I think completion won't be until 2028. So this is like a long-term refurbishment plan for O'Hare. So, I guess we'll just have to make sure that we stick around long enough to see this.
We are going to have to revisit this once a year, and we'll do a little progress report once a year.
$8.5 billion revamp, though.
Okay.
According to CNN. So no shortage of funds are being deployed here.
That's a lot of billions.
Yeah, it's a lot. That is a lot of billions.
I mean, look, and I didn't even bring this up. They don't even have TSA pre-check in all the terminals. Like, I again, O'Hare Airport, Chicago. This should be an afterthought.
Yeah,
I had to sign up for Clear because they didn't have TSA pre. I'm like, what am I buying TSA pre for? You guys don't even offer that service in some of these terminals. Like, it was a really rough experience because of the terminal I was in. They got those old drop down ceilings. I mean, it just was. Yeah. I'm like looking for something to eat. The lounges are 7 terminals away. You would have probably enjoyed filming me through this grumpy few hours of my life.
My last comment is, the peril of O'Hare is actually mitigated by living in Chicago. Like the people who have the worst experiences at O'Hare, it's usually involving like a connection. That's where people like can really get caught. So fortunately, living in Chicago, okay, it's either a starting point or a final destination. Totally. That I think helps it a little bit, but still, lots of direct flights. But every time I go to O'Hare, I'm just like, okay, is this the time where I just get screwed by a 4-hour wait in security, or is this just going to be the time that I get my bad O'Hare experience? So you're always like looking over your shoulder, but I feel you, man. I feel you. The Sellies and Chirps continues on the Blackhawks Insider Podcast. That was a good one, man. That was got some real life travel in there. Yeah, real life. Yeah, Hot Pockets. That was good. we're winding down here to the end of the season, which is hard to believe. The final week of the regular season. In fact, of course, it's going to be a big off season for the Blackhawks with the draft lottery coming up on May 8th, and then of course the draft itself at the end of June. But we want to thank you for tuning in to Blackhawks Insider Podcast week in and week out. Our off-season schedule is still being formulated as we speak. We might do some special episodes with some of the big off-season events. We might do bi-weekly. We might just, pack up the caravan and talk to you in September when training camp starts again. But either way, for my co-hosts, Colby Cohen, our producers, Jenna Rose and Trevor Bray, and our DJs, Brad Dollar and Southside Jake, thanks once again for tuning in to this episode of Blackhawks Insider. Our thanks as well to ChevyDriveChicago.com, drive what Captain Jonathan Taves drives. And thanks, of course, to you, our listeners. And regardless of Blackhawks Insider over the summer, more content is available all offseason long at Blackhawks.com. So enjoy the rest of the regular season, everybody, and we will talk to you next time on Blackhawks Insider.